Hi, my name is Tony Martinez. Hey, there you go. Hi, my name is Tony Martinez, and I'm representing the Texas Association of Supervisors of Mathematics today. We recently conducted a survey with our membership here. We wanted to share some of those results. With me today is Jerri LaMirand here. It's a two-part survey here, so we'll talk about that. As those handouts are going around here, I do want to, again, thank you for having us here. On the survey, we surveyed 489 respondents, both membership and then our Mathematics Supervisors Organization had the opportunity to send that to their teachers in districts. So the representation here is both teachers and supervisors or coordinators. On that first bar graph here, you see that support of the proposed SBOE amendment here, and you can see the different grade bands there. We split them up into different grade bands here, and you can see the support for and against that proposal. We understand that the proposal is no longer here, but this was after that, this is prior to that September meeting where the proposal was on board here. So you can see the results there. Another question that we asked is, should the TEKS, mathematics TEKS, be reviewed before the cycle, the next cycle here? And you can see the results there. I'm not going to read those to you again by the different grade bands, but there was no great distinction in the grade bands here. Pretty consistent in the message. On the second page, I want to give you some more detail about that question. Should mathematics TEKS be refined, streamlined, revised before the next review cycle, which we anticipate as 2019-20? And if yes, what kind of TEKS changes would you support? And you see the diagram there. I know that streamlining is the state board's process here, and in that box there, we just kind of defined what we meant by refine, streamline, and review. And what we were looking at is just different levels here. Refine is just tweaking, the streamline is the document that you proposed, or the method you proposed, and revise is kind of a more detailed revision here. 242 of those respondents said no to the TEKS changes here, but of the 247 who said yes, you can see the Venn diagram and see what kind of revision process they were looking at. So just wanted to share that. We also asked some open-ended questions, and I hope Jerri has 3 minutes to talk about those.
Okay. So once again, my name is Jerri LaMirand, and I'm the Vice President for the Texas Association of Supervisors of Mathematics. And to continue with this data, we had an open response question, and it's in the packet, the separate packet that looks like this that you received. It's stapled separately. And you can see that the question that we asked all of the respondents was, what professional learning supporting resources are needed to best help teachers with implementation of the mathematics TEKS? This was open response, and this was not a required question. But from that, we had about 66% respond, 321 responded, and it broke down into two parts on the pie chart: providing more resources or providing professional learning. And if you turn the page, I broke down the providing resources. There were three main components of providing resources. They're looking for clarifying documents, more specificity, or they were looking for clear examples and non-examples of standards, or they're looking for providing sample questions on how the standards are to be assessed. And then what was interesting, the majority of the respondents that wanted more resources came from teachers, not from TASM math leaders. And I wanted to break it down from elementary or K-5 to secondary. And as you can see, this elementary K-5, they overwhelmingly needed more clarifying documents. And I do believe that's probably because many of those teachers are generalists and they do not specialize in mathematics. I then provided you some specific feedback from teachers and from math leaders on the resources that you can go through and look at. And some of the interesting things that they put on there, of course, was clarification, educate parents, clarification of what the TEKS and the standards should look like in the classroom, provide videos of master teachers. Let me go real quick to providing professional learning. So I'm going to jump all the way to professional learning. And there were three main things that we saw in professional learning: on clarifying TEKS, on teaching how to connect representations, models, and strategies, and of course on how to teach the process standards. And then I gave you feedback as well from math leaders and teachers. And then what's important is also the very last slide, I'm having to talk quick, is on other comments. and I want to make sure you look at those. Those were some of the other comments that did not fall under resources or PD. And many of them said, let's leave them alone, give them time, don't change anything yet. Wait till the review cycle comes up. And that is a speed review.
Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, Ms. Hardy.
I would just like to comment that this is the easiest I've understood a graph in a long time. So y'all must be doing graphs in a good way, because this was very clear and concise. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Rattler.
It was a process.
Oh, whoops. I'll turn off.
There we go. Did y'all drill down into your data on years of experience of the respondents to see if the concerns or the desires expressed in here varied from a teacher with 1 to 5 years, or a master teacher, or 5 to 10, or any of that?
We did not drill down to years of experience, but it's interesting that you make that comment. I had the opportunity to listen to the September testimony, and I think it was Mr. Ramey who talked about experience versus new teachers. I think the comment he made is that I think that experienced teachers are looking at the TEKS as a guiding document and are saying that there's a lot in here that they like. It's the new teachers that he said. I think less experienced teachers are the ones that are more likely to be sort of nervously reading the doc and studying it and being sure that they check off every single box. And I point that out in your question here because I think it goes to that desire for more resources, for more professional learning, especially with those newer teachers.
Do you think part of the frustration or what may have exacerbated the problem was when we moved content from higher grades to lower grades? And if a teacher, especially a generalist in K-5, had been teaching 3rd grade math for several years, and now all of a sudden we've got 4th and 5th grade concepts in 3rd grade, did that exacerbate this problem?
Yes, I think that was part of it, but also not having the resources up front or training up front. And that was very clear in some of the comments. And some of the comments were to bring back text teams or some training like what we had in the past. Text teams was a wonderful training, and they lasted anywhere from 3 to 5 days over major concepts that was offered by the state.
So last question, is it a fair characterization that the problem isn't as much with the standards as it is with the implementation or development for the teachers to teach the standards? Or is it both and?
I would say that here's a recommendation I would give here. I would not put the proposed amendment to strike through the process standards up there, because I think at our September meeting, I think we were close. Again, I was listening to Mr. Houch and to Mr. Ramey, that testimony at the very end of the day. It was a long day. And one of the comments are, yeah, we're all for mathematical thinking. Another comment, I don't think anybody is arguing about the process standards and that you need to think through mathematical problems. And that's what the process standards are about. The comments they did make were referring to specific content standards. 4.4B, I think, is one that came out. 3.4K is another one that came out here. So the process standards are those. I appreciate the fact that not only do we focus on mathematics, but we focus on students. It's all about student learning here. And it's those skills that we want to share with our students. 8 divided by a 4th here. You can give me the answer, and my follow-up question to you is, how do you know? How would you convince somebody who didn't get your answer? What I want to say is that if I have a teacher who in one classroom says 8 divided by 4th, the algorithm is you invert and multiply and you get 32, that's great. But if next door I have that teacher who asked that why question, and there's that relationship to quarters and dollars and money, or that pie graph here, that's a deeper level of understanding that I would want for all of our students. So again, I think that's what the process standards say. I don't think it's about the process standards. I think it's about the content standards. And if I may, I'm representing TASM here today. If I may step out of my TASM role for a second. My name is Tony Martinez, and I'm the secondary mathematics coordinator at Leander Independent School District. And it's my bad that I haven't reached out to our parents Mr. Houchins, Mr. Raymond. And I know there are others out there. And so what I'm doing here today is inviting them to have those discussions about those specific content standards that they've been talking about. I know often when they present, they have the opportunity to share some information with you. Again, the invitation is extended to the district to sit down and talk about those content standards so that we can move closer together, closer to the middle.
Thank you.
I'm just kind of curious. I guess you were here this morning. And,
Yes, yes, sir.
You heard the testimony offered up by Dr. Milgram. I'm just kind of curious. What's your response? Your thoughts.
I'll go again here. I'm hoping that you have the process standards before you here, because I think there's some misconception. If you read those process standards, they're about communication. They're about problem solving. They're about understanding and making connections to other mathematics, both inside and outside the mathematics classroom here. Again, I think those are important. I don't think they were specifically mathematics processes. I think they are things we want for all of our students in mathematics and in all content areas. That's the first thing that struck me.
And I would like to recommend that, I'm not sure he stands for all mathematical leaders in our country and that he represents all math leaders. I would highly recommend that you reach out to Dr. Joe Bowler, who is also from Stanford University, and get another perspective of this before making some critical decisions.
No, thank you.
Okay. One other question. I'm curious about this survey here. I find this a little disturbing that we've got, I'm looking at, it's over a third of the teachers, in some cases 6 through 8 and 3rd through 5 is 41% of the teachers that say that the amendment's good to go. They don't have any problem with that. That kind of tells me, when the numbers are this high, that it's almost inconsequential to do it. That's why I'm asking.
I think the question, though, that we put out with the proposed amendment was to remove it, strike it from the knowledge and skill statements,
Exactly.
not to remove it totally
Right.
from the standards.
But I'm saying
Right.
if we went forward, let's say, with what was proposed in September,
Right.
that, it's kind of, it's not like there's, no support for that. It's pretty high support for kind of moving forward with that. I was surprised it's this high. That's why
I
I'm
was too,
curious.
but I really don't think it's going to make a difference in what happens in the classroom. I truly don't.
Okay, that's actually what I
Removing it
wanted
from
to
the
know.
knowledge and skill statements.
Is not going to make a difference. Okay. And then on the TEKS review before next cycle, now I'm even more disturbed by this, because they actually there's quite a bit of support for reviewing before the next cycle. Did that surprise you?
It didn't surprise me, because I think people were answering it different ways. Reading some of the remarks, there are a lot of teachers and supervisors who said, leave it alone, leave us alone, let us do something for a few years and stick with it. I happen to have voted yes, let's do some reviewing here. My philosophy is that our documents can always get better. It's a continuous improvement one. We can always do something to improve here. Again, my recommendation would be to do so on the cycle, the standard cycle here. Let us live with those, and again, bring in the more resources that are being developed by the agency, more training for those less experienced teachers, and even those experienced teachers who have received different content from different grade levels, or who have been teaching 4th grade and now moving to 5th grade, or teaching Algebra 1 and now moving to Algebra 2. There are a lot of changes that are taking place here, and love for the opportunity for professional learning to continue to take place.
Yeah. Actually, the only thing on that my districts said, I had a meeting with like 23 districts or something like that. You guys all have that handout of what my district said, but basically, the only thing that they brought up that they thought could be streamlined easily was the personal financial literacy elements. And actually, I noticed Dr. Milgram also had that in his list. I mean, what's your thoughts on that? You know, I mean, I know legislatively that we need to put those, or we're required to put those in where we could, you know, where it made sense, basically, is what the legislation says. I mean, I just wonder your thoughts about that, because, you know, when I look at some of those standards, like the first grade standard, I think Dr. Milgram had on his sheet, and I don't have it in front of me now. I mean, it seemed kind of advanced for a first grader. Talk about needs versus wants. You know, that's kind of hard for a concept for a first grader, you know? Needs versus wants? It's in the social studies, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the only thing my math teacher said. You could definitely, because it takes a lot of time.
yeah.
I personally think the personal financial literacy strands are fine, you know, but, and I agree with Tony, everything could always be revised. It is, you know, continuously improving our documents. And I just want to kind of go back to something I said earlier. When I said I agreed with that, I don't think it's going to make a difference if you remove the process standards from the knowledge and skills. I am not agreeing, though, with removing the process standards out of our standards.
Right, right. Just
Okay.
knowledge and skill statements. Right.
And my comment, and it's a caution here, is that tweaking, streamlining the mathematics teaks here, proceed cautiously, because a change in third grade affects subsequent grade levels. So there's that verticality here that we need to look at here that I know we didn't spend enough time doing first time around here. So just proceed with caution, as a change in one grade level may have some changes down the road here that we didn't foresee.
Any other, Ms. Hardy, did you?
I can tell you, the kids know wants and needs. It is amazing. And that is, when they put it in math, I heard my math person say that. So don't worry, we've got that taken care of, because it is in social studies. But there is that question of whether or not schools are following the law and teaching their social studies. But if they are, then there's no problem with that. And it is amazing, because they have it down. I've asked that in many elementary classrooms. So that's not a worry. But I did appreciate your clarification, what you said. Removing it from the knowledge and skills statement is not, it's not going to make any difference, because you don't want it removed from the
standards,
from
right.
the standards. You still want the process skills there.
Correct.
And I think that's what our item was in September, was to remove it from the process standards from the knowledge and skills statement. So the point was, it really doesn't make any difference as long as it's in the standards.
And that's what our survey asked, right.
And so that's why it's kind of confusing on that answer, because they don't want the processes removed. They just want it, they don't care whether it's there or in the introduction or wherever it's going to be.
And we've had our process standards for even part of our previous standards. We've had them, in fact, before Common Core was developed. And they were at the bottom of our standards, but they've been around for a while.
You put them at the top so they could be more easily read.
That's actually also a handout that you got just before we started. That big stack of handout stuff is stuff that I had that show what the previous process standards were before we did these standards, just so we know, because I actually hadn't gone back and looked at them, to be honest, until we were getting ready for this meeting, and so I thought I'd just assemble those and make sure folks had seen them. Any other did you have any other comments about, anything that, would help the board with direction here, and any thoughts, just from, either survey results or
I know that there are a lot of testifiers who are coming down the road.
Right behind us.
Yeah,
Okay.
so.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you for doing the survey, actually. We really appreciate that.
Very good.